The year is 1802, and a man named Humphry Davy is slaving away in his workshop. He had been the eldest son in an English household who hoped to be a surgeon and a chemist in his earlier years. Yet fate would take him on a different path. Davy would go on to invent the light bulb. Get those gasps out of the way, because Thomas Edison was not the true founder of the light bulb. I know, shocking, isn't it? See what I did there? In his earliest years, Davy would conclude that the production of electricity in electrolytic cells resulted from a chemical action and a chemical combination between opposite charges. But he wasn't done. Before Davy, London streets would be lined with dimly lit, inefficient carbon lamps using one continuous electric spark. Boy, these lamps are awfully dark, and this is a pretty shady neighborhood. I sure hope nothing bad happens to me. Hello? So Davy created the arc lamp to replace these. He took two wires, connected them to a battery, and used charcoal tips to power it. This created much brighter lights. Since they used much more power, these arc lamps were far more costly. They also couldn't be used indoors because of a constant humming noise and intense heat that radiated from them. James Bowman Lindsay, our first three-named man. Lindsay was a Scotsman who was concerned about fires that had been started with lighting at mills. One day in 1832, Lindsay uncovered the first constant electric light. Ta-da! Jump ahead another 15 years. We're now in Germany with Julius Plucker and Henrich Geissler. The two men were down in their old lab working on an invention of their own. While working with glass tubes, they discovered something pretty cool. By removing almost all the air from the tubes, filling it with rarefied gas like neon or argon, and passing an electrical current through it, it could make it glow. Las Vegas is gonna love these in 100 years. Who? We're now around 70 years from the first invention from Humphry Davy, and Edison still hasn't entered our story yet. So when does he come into play? Well, first we have to talk about Henry Woodward. Henry Woodward was a Canadian inventor, along with his science partner, Matthew Evans, a hotel keeper. From Toronto, the first two men created a design for the first incandescent light bulb. These men, having successfully unlocked what so many people had been trying to create for generations, applied for and were granted the United States patent for it in 1876. However, they were too poor to develop it themselves. In comes Thomas Edison, whose pockets were lined with cash. He swooped in and bought the patent from these men. Edison would take the floor plan and build one of the first incandescent light bulbs. No, Edison, you don't get to have a light bulb above your head as if this was your idea. Lying, conniving, no good, Edison! I was opportunistic, man. I'm a businessman, if nothing else. Edison was an inventor, and as much as I hate to admit it, he invented a lot. An industrial research lab with all sorts of chemicals and materials, the phonograph, a carbon telephone transmitter, but perhaps most importantly was his contribution to the electric light. Edison's innovation would create a longer-lasting incandescent bulb. He experimented with different filaments, cardboard. He tried different grasses and canes, like hemp and palmetto. Edison would settle on a carbonized bamboo filament that allowed the light bulb to last more than 1,200 hours. Edison would file for a patent in 1879 and would be granted one for himself. Finally, a patent of his own? Edison understood the power of what he had. He said, "We will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles." However, a few years later, in 1883, the U.S. Patent Office ruled that Edison's U.S. patent for the light bulb was based on the work of William E. Sawyer, making Edison's patent now invalid. To avoid a potential court battle, Edison would join forces with the owner of the British light bulb patent, Joseph Swan, for a company called Ediswan. Edison would go on to create an electricity distribution company, which would use his work in cities, transformers, and buildings all over the world. He was a smart guy, but he was sneaky as hell. In the end, Edison did so much for the progress of the light bulb. He's the reason the room I'm in is illuminated. Frickin' Edison! Does anyone know if we have any more light bulbs?